black gangsters committing illegal crimes. They're destroying people. Okay, so as they say in the street, you don't want to get this thing twisted.
I thought they were talking
Even
about
though the
criminals.
U.S. economy was booming in the late 60s, the inner cities were down. Just as the black population started coming up to the north in mass, industrial jobs started declining. By the early 60s, heroin was getting popular in places like Harlem, Baltimore, Detroit.
And then around 1964, 65, it was really booming.
A river of money is flowing because business is so good.
Put this together with a big pool of unemployed black males around the streets of the city, and there's the birth of a new industry. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people standing on the corner selling drugs. And that's the world that Frank Matthews took over.
My name is Clinton Shorty Dees. I was born in the native of Baltimore, Maryland. It was a poor community. We lived in poor housing. From that poor housing, we went to poor schools, received a poor education. It returned us right back into the poor community.
I grew up on a small tobacco farm in eastern North Carolina, not far from where Frank did. And I actually grew up in sort of similar circumstances. My father was a sharecropper.
In 1959, I was going to New York as a gambler. See, I used to gamble with the credit card. I was what they call a solid.
I had a lot of sympathy for them. A lot of them were extremely intelligent.
We didn't have many choices. So if you don't have a choice, you have to take a chance.
They could not make money in the real world. They were not given the education opportunities that the whites had.
So a lot of us took to what was available for us. Gambling, trying to pimp women, drug dealing.
I needed money. I like nice clothes, pretty women. They paid me $1.55 an hour. And the only other way I knew to earn that type of money was in narcotics.
African American parents, my parents marched with Dr. King, but that became something they wanted for their children, to be able to go to college, be educated, and become earners in society. And the drug guys were pushing heroin.
I started in the drug game kind of early. In the early 60s, selling what they call yellow jackets, red devils.
You had kids who their parents had struggled and marched and wanted to make sure they were successful, suddenly got involved in drugs. So just destroying the African American community.
I went to the corner of 111th Street and 7th Avenue for $65 worth of dope. Brought it back downtown, bagged it up into $2 bags.
When the guy might get a stick up down, you might stop sticking up and start selling drugs. Okay, you have less chance of getting caught. You started gravitating toward that way of life.
To try and understand Frank Matthews, you have to understand the area around Durham, North Carolina. That's where he grew up at. It was a really unique time and place.
Three of the biggest drug kingpins in the United States at that time were black and were all from North Carolina. It was Frank Lucas, Leslie Atkinson, and Frank D. Matthews.
When I was working at a supermarket, he was working over in North Durham. All of us were trying to make a nickel and a dime to keep ourselves going. I met him, and we clicked and talked and everything else. And we was like two homeboys.
Durham, North Carolina is deep with rich black history. Some of the first in the United States of America, colored Negro, Afro-American black, who did what they did, came from Durham.
Durham was called the Black Wall Street. We had our own shoe shining cars, our own insurance companies, our own banks. We had our own schools. We had our own fire department.
I'm at Scarborough and Hardy Funeral Home, family business in Durham. Started out in 1871. We are the fifth oldest black funeral home in the United States.
Me just being a Southern country boy, I thought black and white race was great. A lot of blacks in Durham had a lot of money. It was very wealthy blacks in Durham.
We had 3 white businesses, 1 Oriental restaurant, 125 black businesses.
But Durham, in comparison to other cities in the South, was not a rampant racist place.
No murders, no hangings, no lynchings.
The whole atmosphere of Durham in the 50s and 60s gave us the incentive to try to achieve more.
And I will always use the word the Godfather. The Godfather of the black community back in the late 1800s was the man himself, Washington Duke University.
The high school Frank attended produced many notable people, and it sent most of his graduates on to college.
And now I came from a family of 13, and out of our 13, 12 of us went to college.
It came from a thriving community that produced a lot of people that really succeeded in mainstream society. Now, why he chose to take the path he did is probably a secret we'll never know.
My classmate, Shirley Caesar, gospel singer. Ernie Barnes, the artist, my classmate.
I think out of 325 people out of my graduating class from Hillside, I think 300 of us went to college.
The briefs written for the Supreme Court decision of desegregation, North Carolina College of Durham.
We knew we had to be the best. We were taught that by our parents.
It wasn't unusual for young blacks in that day to want to move up and down themselves. No, they make it big.
Ironically, Frank Matthews' only real conviction that we know of was for stealing chickens down in Durham when he was a teenager.
You know, I think it was spring of 1961. I know it was a real pretty Saturday afternoon. Me and one of my partners received a call after the old phone exchange poultry department started stealing chicken. Saw a young black male running through the woods behind some houses back towards Canal Street in Durham. Saw a young gentleman come up to a house on Canal Street, and we approached him, and pretty instantly we arrested him for stealing chickens that day.
That all of us were things presented because all of us made a side hustle here and there. But no, he just got, the rumor was he got arrested for stealing chickens. He may have gotten caught, but he wasn't the only one that stole chickens out of property. No.
The best I remember, we said to the judge that he was cooperative with us, and being a 16-year-old, I think the judge slapped him on the back of his hand, and he left Durham probably the year after he was arrested.
So Frank leaves Durham as a teenager and he goes to Philadelphia. He stays there briefly. It appears he got in some kind of trouble for running numbers there, but probably not convicted of anything. And he left Philadelphia, he goes to Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, becomes a barber. Barbershop's a perfect place to keep running numbers.
Good news, the market's swinging back to buyers, which means that dream home won't be there forever. Don't let someone else beat you to it. Start your search today. Make it real with Realtor.com.
What's so special about Domino's specialty pizzas? Your taste buds will know. Trust me, they'll know.
Don't just take classes, take charge. Start your comeback today at PurdueGlobal.edu.
Save up to $900 on beauty rest black adjustable sets. Plus, when you purchase, get free delivery, up to $300 in slip cash, a $200 MasterCard rewards card, and 60 months zero interest financing. Now in Ashland.
During the summer, my face looked like somebody just let at me. It was horrendous.
I didn't really start noticing it until others really noticed it.
I was constantly sweeping it up or collecting it in the shower.
Finally, see life-changing results for dark spots, hair loss, aging, rosacea, and more.
The results were amazing.
Music has been life-changing for me.
It's just been such a huge weight lifted off my shoulders.
If you wanted to be a big-time gangster, where would you go? You go to New York City. You start off as a barber, Bedford-Stuyvesant, met a big-time numbers king. Because of Frank's personality, I guess, took him under his wing and tried to get him introduced to the Italians so that Frank could get into the drug trade. It's very unclear what happened at the meeting. I believe it was with the Gambino crime family, and they turned him down for whatever reason. And so Frank, for all intents and purposes, should have been shut out of the drug trade and maybe end up as a low-ranking member of the trade like most blacks at that time.
At that time, we really didn't believe that the ethnic backgrounds of these people in the inner city didn't give them the power to do the things that Mafia did.
It was a monopoly. It was one of the biggest monopolies in history. 95% of the heroin coming into the United States at that time came through the so-called French connection. You had poppies in Turkey, you had the laboratories in Marseille, and you had the distribution networks to Montreal and New York City.
Through the Puerto Rican numbers dealers, Frank met another contact, Orlando Gonzalez, who was Cuban. Gonzalez got embedded in New York and fled to Venezuela, and before he left, he sold Frank his first kilo of drugs. Frank was off and running.
Rolando, an astute dealer too, wanted to meet Frank.
So Gonzalez gets down to Venezuela and he hooks up with the remnants of the French connection.
Frank was going down at one time with other people himself. Then Frank showed up alone, and then he became so powerful that they decided to work with him.
Frank is on his own and he's getting heroin directly from the French connection. The only black guy, the only non-mafia person really in the United States to be dealing directly with the French connection.
A drug connection was sacred. If you had a drug connection, you had something going on.
He did go down to Venezuela twice. And he believed in the delivery of 60 pounds of heroin.
It was really a golden time to be a drug dealer. The economy was hitting on all cylinders. Streets were full of money.
So any night of the week, everybody out on their jewelry, their furs, or sometimes the diamonds, their cars, they come up, they look in the town, the women. On any given night, Frank Matthews, Mickey Barnes, Peter Kirkman, all the players.
It was a joyous time in New York. Everybody was making money. Everybody was happy. People went to this place to that place. It was marvelous. It was a marvelous place to be. And then you had a lot of nightclubs in New York where it was so fabulous. You had the Girl Club in General, Fifth Street. You had
I noticed he didn't say Frank now,
Paradise.
Because all the cheese would be there, all the players would ride the move. And those were all in Harlem. You know, I'm a Harlem guy.
Frank was supplying the biggest drug dealers in Philadelphia, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Boston, New Haven, Connecticut, Miami, New Orleans, all over the country.
In terms of the New York scene, he's definitely the biggest gangster that came out of New York, and he may be the biggest gangster period.
Now, I have never seen Frank with any money or doing any deals or anything like that. His relationship with me was 1% to another different. His word was my word.
He was a guy that had great leadership skills and knew how to control the fight and distribution all along the East Coast and control an organization through violence and intimidation.
Because I don't know what Frank did for a living, but I know he was always there for me if I needed him.
Within a couple of years, he was one of the biggest drug dealers in the history of the country, and it's really amazing. I mean,
DEA had information he was getting heroin in up to 100 kilo increments, pure heroin from the French connection. By the time those hit the street, let's say...
Who the hell is he? He was young, like he wasn't even around at the time. Yeah.
$20 million.
Okay.
You know, we talked about Frank Lucas, right? We talked about Mickey Barnes. They were essentially New York dealers, New Jersey dealers. And that's all I heard. Mickey this, Mickey that, Mickey.
I didn't really get an understanding about Frank until I rose in this lifestyle.
If he wasn't investigated, he probably would have set up a truly national and then eventually an international network that would have just boggled the mind.
He was in a league of his own, and he was a top, not only organizer, but businessman. His son stuff was he posed as a real estate developer.
which was a front. He bought a whole series of parcels of land where he was informed the federal highway was going to be there. Had that gone through, he would have been a multi-millionaire at this time in real estate.
This is a story that I know to be true, you know, because I was there when the gentleman asked him and reminded him, he had given $1 million to a friend to hold. And disappeared again. So when the gentleman sees him again, he says, "Frank, when you gonna come get that money?" And Frank goes, "What money?" He said, "Yo, remember you gave me those shopping bags, the money?" He said, "I'll come get it in a week or so." So how much money does he have?
And when I first met him, his name was not out there like that. But as the years went, like a couple years later, 68, 69, his name was ringing like doorbell.
Word was in Durham, he was taking over the black mafia, which was the word in Durham. And that was when it was described back to police department. Now, a lot more Frank, anywhere in the world, he gets that big. And he did.
First time I saw him, he was just like a little country boy to me. Black shirt, I think he wore.
I'm Lennox Avenue and 147th Street. And I started, following. Frank was doing a walk and talk with somebody on the street, and I'm watching the movements of Frank, and I smacked right into a car. Frank came over and said, "Oh, these damn photographers, damn drivers, honky drivers."
I'll tell you, he was out in front of us all the time.
I'd say he was definitely smarter than Frank. Okay, Frank Lucas. Yeah, definitely. The reports are he controlled the Eastern Seaboard. So he was definitely a leader at a very young age. He had the penchant for lunch. Befriended one, bought him an apartment, but beat the hell out of him at one time. And he had too much cocaine.
At the same time, he had a common law wife named Barbara Hinton. He was married and had 2 children. Frank's appetite for women was legendary. He supposedly had girlfriends all over the country, but he still maintained a fairly normal home life with Barbara Hinton and his kids. And Barbara Hinton even hired a tutor to come into the house, like, any typical middle-class mother to help the kids after school.
I started teaching in Brooklyn in 1968. I taught elementary school, grade 4 at the time. And around 1971, I started working for a tutoring service in Brooklyn. And one of the clients that we had was what I call the Matthew family. And I was sent there, probably because I lived and worked in the area where they lived. They lived in Flatbush. I lived in Flatbush and worked in the Flatbush area, so I was probably the closest tutor, and I was sent to their home in the apartment on Clarkson Avenue. That's very nice boys, very well behaved, did the work. In all honesty, I don't know that they necessarily needed tutoring per se. I was paid weekly, yes, I was paid $100 for the week. So I never really got into what Mr. Matthews was doing. At one time, she once mentioned to me something about that we were in real estate, and then I just assumed that they were in real estate. Rang the bell, the door opened, and it actually was Frank Matthews. Now I know it was Frank Matthews. They told me that the family would be there in a few minutes, so they were out, whatever they were doing, and I should come in.
By this time, Frank was generating unheard of amounts of cash. Feds heard him on a wiretap at some deal in a hotel in the Bronx, talking about having $4 million in cash with him.
It was right by the 41st precinct. There was a stadium motel. He put $4 million on the table at one time. And he bragged about this. And he said, "Let me see if you can match this." And nobody could at the time.
Now, $4 million in cash in 1971 or 2 is like $25 million now. So those are the amounts of money that Frank Matthews was using on a daily basis. The police really started to get a sense of what was going on, the scope of Frank's operation, when they raided an apartment that probably belonged to his Lieutenant Mickey Beckwith in Brooklyn, nicknamed it the Ponderosa. Ponderosa is where they would process the heroin.
And he would, this is a classic. He would have them at the table with no clothes on, and they were cutting up drugs with the deck of cards and filling the glassine envelopes. To make 10,000, 20,000 bags a night, these drug cutters would work at Ponderosa, which was 101 East 56th Street at the time. We called it the Ponderosa.
We were bagging up at the door.
It took us an hour to get through the doors. We finally had to break a wall down. That's when we realized, and the bosses realized that he was not just a street dealer. He was an international trafficker.
They cut so much dope in the Ponderosa that when the police raided it, they found a half kilo in residue just left on the floor.
Mixing the drugs with bottles from canoes, 2 million glassine envelopes.
$10 worth of heroin in each one is $25 million they were going to pack up in that one location.
The drug cutters would work for 24, 36 hours straight.
One DEA document I saw talked about the time when one of Frank's cutters died in the Ponderosa because he had inhaled too much heroin. The confidential informant told him that when the police came, Frank came outside and told them he was going to handle it in the lead. And he did. One of the DEA case agents told me at the time, trying to make a case on Frank Matthews was like trying to arrest God. So Frank is supplying the biggest drug dealers in most of the cities up and down his house. Philadelphia was probably his biggest stronghold. He worked with people like Major Coxey, he had like Tommy Farrington, who came up with him when he was going to North Carolina, John Pop Darby, who became his right-hand man, and Tyrone, Mr. Millionaire Palmer.
But there were a lot of people, even in the Frank's own organization, that were killed and executed in Philadelphia.
At the time, Philly's drug underworld was under siege by a group calling themselves the Black Mafia.
Philadelphia and Derby's section, when they cut a drug dealer's head off and put his head on the outside window rail of a bar where drug dealers hung out.
The Black Mafia were Nation of Islam members that operated out of Temple Number 12 in Philadelphia. They were extorting drug dealers, they were selling drugs themselves, they were involved in a lot of murders.
Now, the Black Mafia, resented the fact that Frank was trying to set up franchises, which what they were. He was trying to franchise his operation.
Did he pull the trigger? No. Did violence bother him? Not at all. And he had underlings like Beckwith and Puff Darby and a lot of other people could have easily whacked anybody they wanted to, and they did, of course, we know that. But Matthews himself was kind of a star in his own right, and you couldn't really associate him with pulling the trigger or shoving a knife at somebody.
Well, I used to see Frank there a lot was in Atlantic City at the Club Holland.
Somehow, Tyrone, Mr. Millionaire Palmer, got enmeshed with the Black Mafia in a deal for $250,000 of cocaine where either he paid them to do a hit on somebody or they felt like he owed them some money because the deal got messed up. So on Easter Sunday 72, the Philly Black Mafia finds Tyrone Palmer inside the Club Harlem in Atlantic City, which is someplace Frank liked to hang out at, but he didn't happen to be there that night. But Tyrone Palmer was. Philly Black Mafia pulls out their guns, huge shootout. In front of hundreds of witnesses, they kill Tyrone Palmer, his bodyguard, and 3 women that are with him. The witnesses are also terrified. No one ever comes forward, so no one's ever arrested and convicted for the crime.
That was on an Easter Sunday morning. We were getting ready to leave out of there when he got killed. We had just left from that area when a fat tie, they call him. But I think they killed him out of jealousy. That Black Mafia was leaning on everybody at that time. You know, if you didn't give him some money, you couldn't operate in Philly. Ain't too much change about that right now as we speak.
The violence got so bad that Matthews had Pop Darby come up to New York to live so he'd be out of the way of harm down in Philly and continue to run his operation from New York.
It got interesting when more murders came in, more murders that Frank had committed or had something to do with. Turk Scott was a senator from Baltimore, and Frank had him killed. Frank didn't trust him. I don't think he was a homeboy, to tell you the truth.
Some law enforcement feel like Matthews had something to do with Turk Scott's death, but it doesn't appear so. There's actually a guy named Sherman Dotson, who was the son of a prominent minister in Baltimore, who was implicated in the killing, and he said he did it on behalf of Black October, which is a black Muslim group that supposedly wanted to rid the streets of drug dealers who were harming the community. Now, on an interesting aside, Sherman Dotson's cousin was Tamara Dotson, who was the star of the blaxploitation movie Cleopatra Jones. Baltimore was another one of Frank's strongholds. You ever didn't dream how big he was when you talk to two of his chief contacts down there, Big Head Brother and Willie Jones. Those guys are legends in Baltimore. But to them, Frank Matthews is a legend.
We knew that he had a couple of contacts in Baltimore, named Brother Carter and Liddy Jones.
I met Frank Matthews through a guy named Reggie Mason, and he bought him by my house. I got my drugs for $19,000. He had a better price than anyone for me. Another bag of riches.
Big Head Brother is so well known in Baltimore. I mean, he's been name checked on the white.
All more alone. Millions. I was getting big money at the time. I supplied all of Baltimore with records. Mr. Jones, Bill Jones. He was giving me a lot of drugs, but he wasn't giving me enough. I had a girlfriend, Brenda Pinkett. She said, I know somebody in Brooklyn. He said, all the drugs you want. I said, who you know in Brooklyn? He said, Dick, look at that. He told us that I'm gonna give him 5 keys. You have to give me 22,000 for a key. I used to cut it and sell a key and hold a key. I would make real good.
Steak, but in nuggets. Come on.
Find out more about that job. Introducing Indeed Career Scout.
Ronnie 3 Plus? You're gonna need it.
Only Brawny has 3 plies. It's new and it's stronger than Bounty. Some of the strongest.
For outstanding offers across the entire Hyundai lineup, get to Gurney Hyundai. Right now, take advantage of special finance rates and discounts designed to save you money. Gurney Hyundai on Grand Avenue, across from Gurney Mills, or always online at GurneyHyundai.com.
I'm Tom. I ain't in this game to snatch change and pickpocket.
A new organization in a new place. We ain't going. I'll tell you. Then I gotta kill you.
He was like a Shakespearean character. He had so many elements to his personality. Everybody that talks about him has something different to say.
A friend of mine, he came to see a gentleman who I was working for at the time. He gave $40,000 and was supposed to meet us at a certain time to pick up his product. Now he's just throwing us a bone. You know, looking out for us, young, you know, you're hustling here, take this money, I'll get a little pie from y'all. He forgot all about it. Gave us $40,000, didn't come to the meeting. Maybe 4 months later, my man told me, yo, come get that money later on. He told him, keep it.
As his fortunes grew, he became more extravagant in his taste and in his personality and in the way he treated people.
I owed him like $60,000 at one time. So I got it in my car and keep trying to get it to him. So when I did get it, he said, "Now what you keep calling me for?" I said, "Man, you know what's up." He said, he said, "Look, if you broke, keep it, motherfucker." I said, "If you broke, keep it." I don't want to hear that.
This business brings out the best in some people, and it brings out the worst in some people.
A Rolls Royce pulled up from Jamaica, and Frank went around to the back of his car, took out a kilo, an unwrapped marked kilo with his fingerprints on and all, and threw it over to the guy in the car. The guy put it in the trunk of the car. Frank closed his trunk. That's how ballsy he was.
By the late 60s, 69, 70, everybody knew who he was and what he was about.
How could this one guy know so many people? He was everywhere. He was in Las Vegas. He went to Atlantic City. He was in Harlem. He was in Brooklyn. And people everywhere took to him. They liked him.
And I didn't know how to get in touch with him at all, but he always knew where to find me or find whatever. And in those days, Frank would come to their office.
Frank would come back and I would big automobiles, Cadillacs, Rolls Royce, most anything, and always dressed nice.
Even though what he was doing was wrong, but he made it possible for a lot of people to have a lot of things.
And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't finish my last year of law school because he came to Durham and understood that I was in a problem. And he helped me tremendously. Financially, he helped me. Financially and morally. He talked to me and told me what I was geared to be and what he felt that I should do.
He trusted his own kind, the people that came out of Durham.
A gentleman came on the police department. I don't want to call his name, but he ended up marrying Frank. We called it Frank's sister, but it was actually his aunt, because Frank was raised by his grandmother. This officer, I was in charge. Anytime we worked the midnight shift, he always want to take off on Saturday or Friday night to go to New York. I go, what are you doing in New York? He said, my wife's nephew went to apartment in New York, and we went to family sickness. Well, we then talked was out in Durham that Frank was probably a drug dealer in New York City. I had suspicion that the police officer that worked with me, he would have had to know something.
Here we come to yet another unbelievable chapter in the saga of Frank Matthews. In 71, he decided to build himself a house. So he goes to his neighborhood called Tote Hill in Staten Island.
Mrs. Matthews told me that within a few months they'd be moving to Staten Island, and they had building a house on Tote Hill, and she wanted to know if I'd be interested in coming out there. And I said I would be.
He lived in Hill Staten Island, which even to this day is a very high-profile neighborhood.
Frank was the only black guy living in that neighborhood.
And beautiful house, circular driveway. I don't know houses, I know it's colonial or whatever, just a magnificently beautiful house from the outside to the I saw something in the bathroom when I was sitting before, which were hand-painted sinks. The sinks were hand-painted, there were paintings in the sink, which is something I didn't want to know why. I just never saw something like that before. And it was just absolutely beautiful and tasteful, very tasteful.
I'm Jane Diamond, and my husband, Keith Diamond, worked for Frank Matthews. In 1972, I gave birth to paternal twin sons. And she used to say, oh, how great it is, and that she has young children too. And he was very nice to me and congratulated me. That's wonderful that you had twins. And about a week later, after she called me, I got this package came to my door, and I opened it up, and it was from her and Frank Matthews. And it was 2 covers for the cribs, like quilts, and pillow shams for pillows, and they were magnificent. They were beautiful. They were something that you would buy like in a very expensive department store. And I was like a little bit taken back that it was just, this was like really like an expensive gift from just someone who was basically a stranger to me.
And I had just bought a new car, bought a new Chevrolet Malibu in 1972. And I pulled up in the car, and I was walking up the driveway, and he said to me, oh, you bought a new car? You accept a new car? And I said, yes. And he said to me, you could probably get $3,000 for that car. I bought the car for $4,200. It was a brand new car. I said, yes, I guess I could get $3,000. He said, well, bring me the $3,000. You could pick any car you want in the driveway. He said, you could pick one of my cars. So in that sense, he was very nice to me. It was something that I did not want to get involved with, but in that sense, he was very nice to me.
So guess who 2 of his neighbors were in Tote Hill? And when I say neighbors, I don't mean around the corner. I mean next door and across the street. Tommy Three Fingers Lucchese, founder of the Lucchese crime family, and Big Paul Castellano, who was the underboss of the Gambinos, later went on to become the boss, and he was killed by Daddy when Daddy took over the Gambinos.
And why do you live in a neighborhood that had two of the biggest mobsters, the county mobsters at that time on the scene.
So we had two very angry Italian mafia chieftains looking at his lavish outdoor parties, noisy parties every night. And these Brako and Usher guys, the bosses, and they kept very, very low profile. And here's Matthew showing up in his usual Rolls Royce and all kinds of things going on.
The Italians were racist, you know, and didn't like blacks, especially so-called uppity blacks, like Frank Matthews, asserted himself, let alone living in their midst.
Frank at this time was telling people that Carlo Gambino, the head of the Gambino family, the head of the Mafia Commission, had told Paul Castellano to get the PDA information about the license plates of all the cars that were coming to Frank's house. And somebody was giving anonymous information.
In fact, the intelligence was pouring in surreptitiously from somebody on that street, giving the DEA guys license plate status of every license plate that showed up in that hotel.
Frank, he put the police on. The boss. That was Frank.
We did not know who really turned that in. I think the agent knew. I certainly did. He knew after they bought the house and put a seat to be. He was the only black fellow living on that street.
Some of the boys from the mob visited him and suggested that he regarded his wife. And they also suggested he shouldn't have a $1 million house hotel in Staten Island.
The mob, the Gambino family were involved in drugs for a long period of time. The DEA spent a lot of time taking off various members of the Gambino.
Castellano and certainly three fingers around would have wanted him killed.
The feds overheard on wiretaps, mafia members talking about having Frank killed because of his entry into the heroin business and living on Toe Hill.
Where he warned the Italians. He said, touch one of my men and I'll drive down Mulberry Street and I'll kill anyone I see.
So you can see it, even irrespective of what before the fact, he was involved.
He just showed the personality of Frank. Frank really didn't give a shit. I mean, he was fearless. And he wasn't going to let a bunch of what they were at the time in the black gangster community, or Dagos referred to at times. There weren't any Dagos or Guineas tell him what to do.
Just picture the mob. They got all these men, soldiers behind. But they couldn't touch Frank had money. Frank had more money than the mob. So you know they was young. A black dude living next door going on.
I think the mob is overrated. And I knew some heavyweights in the mob. Big time with them, saw them on the street, did business with them. I know of deals that were put together that they couldn't even come up with the money that they were supposed to come up with to handle this. They control the docks and stuff like that, so they had men who were always pinching pennies, what I call it. But then there came a time when they weren't needed.
With a serious issues, I think it's really creating a lot of problems for somebody because there wasn't any violence. I'm pretty sure that if Frank would have stayed at Fort Hill.
In the early 70s, Las Vegas was a playground for America and especially American gangsters of all kinds. Frank Matthews seems to have been one of the biggest celebrities in Vegas in the early 70s. Everywhere he went, people knew him.
Frank was great. He even took care of the guys who hated you the towels in the men's room. He'd get me $100 bill if they're doing nothing, anything in the towel.
Frank, hey Frank, hey Frank. Oh, keep it back the car. And then we talked to Frank Matthews. I said, yeah, hey. When he was walking, I thought they were talking about Frank Sinatra. Hey Frank, hey Frank.
Maybe a 10-fight, maybe. But they were more interested in the homeless and the parties that they filled the rooms.
So I got locked up in the day. So I was in the ring
Muhammad Ali and Jerry Cora was fighting. George Foreman was back in the ring. The top of 64 around this. So I go, Puppy, you can't even beat me. You can puppy you tough. You can't even. So they knocked me tough. So when they would take me out the door, Frank pulled up the lieutenant. You know, and then the police said, let him go. So Frank got me out of that. He took duffel bags of cash to one casino, dropped him on the cashier's tables where they wanted the money for him, and they took 15 to 18% for the house. Frank now to take money. They told him, they had about 10 big suitcases. They had about 10 of them filled with money. They put all these suitcases in this room. Then they go to the fight. You know, we went to the fight and left the money there.
One night at the Thunderbird Hotel, Frank ran into Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown, who were the two biggest dealers in Detroit. And they struck up the conversation.
This black guy standing at the table, he got a pocket for a handful of money, gambling. Eddie sees him over there, and you don't know who he is. He said, "Where is he betting on?" He said, "I'm betting against him." And then finally the guy said, "Hey, homie, where you from?" He said, "I'm from Detroit." And he said, "I'm from New York." He said, "My name's Frank." Frank Matthews? "Yeah, man, you know me?" He said, "No, but we got some mutual friends that know me."
Like all those guys, eventually a party's over. No matter how far behind law enforcement is, we eventually catch up with the bad guys.
Matthews was in Las Vegas during the first few days of January 1973, and at this time, an indictment came out in New York against him.
The next morning, Las Vegas hitman. New York Kingpin, Frank Matthews arrested $25,000, girlfriend, so forth.
He was arrested in Las Vegas by local DA agents.
The judge leveled a bond of $5 million. This was unheard of at the time. It was the biggest bond in history.
The $5 million bail was the highest
Yes.
Established.